Aude Charillon, who has a very French name but is based in the United Kingdom, I discovered. Aude studied her library degree in France, where she grew up, before moving to northeast England. She worked for many years in the public libraries of Newcastle upon Tyne and joined PTFS Europe, now open 5th, in 2021. There she supports library teams implementing Koha in Aspen and helps them make the most of their systems. She's a member of the Koha community documentation team too. She's professionally interested in digital literacy, privacy, open data and intellectual property, and outside of work enjoys board games and hiking. So thank you, Aude.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you, Catherine, for the introduction. So yes, it does confuse people at international conferences, so I'm used to introducing myself as a UK librarian of French nationality, and usually that kind of settles that. I worked in public libraries in Newcastle upon Tyne in northeast England for about 13 years. So that's known as Newcastle Libraries, not to be confused with Newcastle Libraries Australia, which people on Facebook sometimes confused us with, which was really funny. And I was working at Newcastle Libraries when we switched to Koha in 2018. But for the past 4 years, I've been working with Open5th, where I get to work with not just public libraries, but all kinds of different libraries in different library sectors, teams of all sizes. And it's from that experience that really I had the idea for this talk, because both in the implementation stage, in the implementation stage, I tend to train people on how to add data to Koha. And then usually they start using Koha and they're like, okay, but how do we delete? When we have too much stuff, what do we do now and how do we do it right? So hopefully in this talk, I'll give you some tips on how to do that. So yes, some of us may be afraid of deleting, of pressing that big red button. I will say it straight away, I am not one of those people. And yes, I have had some problems because of that. So it's also my experience of deleting stuff I shouldn't have deleted that I'm imparting with you today. So deleting is good, and why is it good? It's good for your server performance. And that's because if you have too much stuff and only limited server space, then the performance of your system might get a bit patchy. So, for example, we get a question around, oh, I'm trying to use the log viewer and nothing's really happening. And we're like, there are millions of rows in your action logs table. That's not great. Maybe we should do something about that. And that's going to improve the speed of your server quite a lot. It's also good practice. Obviously, like the answer could be just increase the server size, but there's a cost to that, both financial and environmental. So it's also just trimming down, keeping things tidy on your server is just good for your system. It's also good to delete just to get to the useful stuff more just quicker, because if you're doing either a user search or even a catalog search, and if you have tons of records that actually aren't relevant because the users have expired, or the catalog record actually has items that have been withdrawn ages ago, or just no items, and that's not useful, and you're gonna waste time sifting through all of this. So instead of having to fight your way through that thicket of trees, I could use loads of idiomatic expressions here, then just deleting all of this means you're gonna get straight to the answer you're searching for. It's also good to delete just for the rights of your users. So many of us in the UK, in Europe, and in other parts of the world will have laws regarding data protection. And data protection often means users have a right for their data to be deleted when it's not necessary for that data to be retained. So if you don't need that data in order to provide the service, that's kind of the wording the GDPR uses in the EU and the UK, then you should delete it. And it also means if you delete that, obviously it's good for your users, it's part of their rights, but it also means you're compliant with all of those type of laws. And finally, it's good to delete for your own ethics and professional standards. A lot of us feel very strongly about privacy. So that's part of that, like getting rid of the data you don't need because you don't need to know that much about your users. Okay, so how are we deleting stuff? First of all, yes, deleting is good, but if we can do it in an automated way, it's so much better because it makes your life easier. There's a script running in the background. Once you've set it all up, you don't need to think about it again. It's just there, and you don't need to use some of your time to do that. This slide, if I had written it in French, would have just said effacer tout. But in English, I have to say anything. So it's really a delete everything that you don't have anymore. So let's look at bibliographic records and items. So first of all, items. Items go missing. Why? It's a mystery. Sometimes, like, it was supposed to be on the shelf, you look and it's not there. Where could it have gone? No idea. We know it happens. It's unfortunate. So you mark them as lost. So how long are you going to keep them marked as lost until you decide, no, actually, they are not there and they are never going to be found? And you may use a system where you mark the items as withdrawn, saying, okay, we've definitely discarded that item. Or maybe they have a last in date that is suspiciously long ago for that type of item. Like if you got a fiction book that hasn't been seen for a while, that sounds a bit weird, so probably you'll go to the shelf and it's not there and it's actually lost. So if we're thinking about automation, there is a script called the batch item deletion, and you can set it to run as often as you like, maybe even nightly, and you can set your parameters a bit like when you're using an SQL report. So there's a where parameter that allows you to enter whichever criteria you want to delete on. So if you want to delete your items that have been marked as lost, you can specify that. And in my example here, it's going to delete any items that have a lost value between 1 and 4. And if you look in your authorized values, then you can obviously decide, looking at the description, what values you want to delete, and then use the actual authorized value in that where parameter. The other example is to delete withdrawn items. So when it says items withdrawn is not 0, so it means they actually have a withdrawn status. If it was 0, then it doesn't have one. And it's been withdrawn over a year and a month ago. In 2505, if you're already on that version, there's actually a parameter that you can include in that script that's going to delete the bibliographic records. Otherwise, if you just delete the items, you're going to end up with empty bib records. And then you can obviously run it more than once, so you can have one for the lost items, one for the withdrawn items. I'm pretty sure there's a parameter around last in date as well, and you can also factor that in. Okay, so that's items. Looking at bib records, when I was doing some research and looking at all the scripts in the Koha manual, as you do, right, I discovered that delete records via leader script, which I did not know about. And apparently, if you change your leader field position 5 to status D for deleted, then you can use the script. This is where I knew I should have asked Catherine Barnes for advice, because I had never heard of this position 5 value D. So if there are people using it, I would be really interested to hear from you, because I don't really understand how you would use that. Otherwise, if you're like me, then you'll probably actually not be doing this automatically. You'll be doing this manually. So how you'll identify your record is up to you, probably using a report. And in the SQL reports library, you'll probably find something that suits you. So, for example, like I just mentioned, bibliographic records without items, where you've deleted the items and either forgot or something happened and you didn't delete the bib records. So you can get a report to find that. When you do that, you may want to think about a few things. So if you are using acquisitions, if you are not creating items at the point of order, you will have bibliographic records that have orders against them. And if you delete them, then those orders will look a bit messy. So you may want to run a report that's going to allow you to filter out those bib records that have orders against them, and then use the batch modification, the batch deletion tool to delete the records. And I suggested also doing something similar with no active serial subscriptions. When you use the batch deletion tool, it has a little safeguard that tells you this action will delete all selected bibliographic records and also attach subscriptions, existing holds, and attach items. So just yes, we're deleting stuff, but we are being mindful before pressing that button, which is actually yellow, not a red one. Okay, so bib and items were doing well. Oh, yes. A little trick. I don't know how many of you do that, but in the UK we have many academic libraries that get a new ebook package every September when the new academic year starts. And that means they need to find all the records from last year because those titles were probably not included in the package and the supplier just sends them the file with all the MARC records anyway. So they need to identify the previous ones, delete them, and then upload the file. So what we've been suggesting for those libraries in that situation is that actually they delete from the import. So just doing the whole process in order, so not everything is about deletion. First, you have your brand new file and you want to add it, so you probably are going to create a MARC modification template to add items to your records, maybe obviously choosing your item types, which libraries should have those items. Maybe you'd want to assign a specific collection, so you can even search for them easily. You import your records in the cataloging module using the usual way, so with the staging, and you apply your template. Maybe you even save it as a profile, so you don't have to remember which things you ticked on the whole page. If you picture it like me, you know there's quite a lot of options on that page. And then the next year, you find in your stage files the file you uploaded, and actually you just click the unimport button from there instead of having to find your records. You unimport, and then you clean, and then you delete the file, and everything's tidy, and you can import the new one. There is a caveat on this, is if you created really nice reading lists using those records, then because those records are getting deleted, then your reading lists are going to be empty or half empty. So just one thing to think about when you delete that way. Okay, and now we get into the meaty side of, and I'm going to have to check my notes for this one. So this is the questions I love to get on a support ticket when we see one and someone tells me, I want to delete all my inactive library members' accounts. I'm like, yes, you should definitely be doing that. You don't need to keep those users who haven't used your libraries for years. And we can actually use a script to delete those users as well. So spoiler alert, it's the delete patrons script. And it's great, and it has safeguards, but it also means that if you really, really want to delete your library users, then you're going to have to jump through the hoops to get past those safeguards and still delete. So this is a kind of a 5-step process. And the first step is going to be to identify your users. So in order to use the delete patron script, we're going to need to end up with sort of a list of borrower number or car number of all the inactive library members whose account you want to delete. And the question that's fun to answer is, what's an inactive library member? What does that mean for this particular library? Is it that their account has expired maybe a year ago, maybe a week ago, maybe 3 years ago? Or is it that they haven't borrowed anything in a specific time periods? Is it that you're using the date last seen field in the borrowers table and you're going to be basing it on that? And can all of these, now we've settled on that definition, can all these inactive library members be found easily using an SQL report, or actually are there sources outside of Koha that you're going to be checking to confirm what this particular list should be? And then one of my earlier this year support tickets, actually it was that second option of their library members were heavily using an external ebook platform, and they recouped the information from Koha and that ebook platform to confirm which users should be, which users were active and therefore which ones should be deleted. Step 2 is actually optional. I will come back to that. But step 2 is going to be needed if your library applies fines and charges. If you don't, that's great. I love that for your library, but some libraries still do that. And we are going to need, that's one of the safeguards of the delete patron script, The delete patron script doesn't delete users that have fines owing. So if anyone still have fines, we're going to have to identify those and deal with that. So the easiest way to do that is to move your users into another category where you're going to have all your users to delete. So that's what this step is doing. So you can just create a new category specifically for that purpose. So for this example on my slide, I've just called it patrons to delete with a category called PDEL. And then you need to move them into the category. So again, either manually, because you've got your SQL reports or your file with your list of borrower numbers or car numbers, and you can do that in the tools with the batch patron modification, or you can do it automatically using the update patrons category if your criteria can be used in the where parameter. So again, a bit like an SQL report. So that's really depending on your use case as well, whether you'll be able to use that or not. It brings a bit of safety as well to use a separate category, and we can come back to that a bit later. Okay, so we've identified our users, we've moved them into our patrons to delete category. Step 3, where first, before we look at fines, deal with outstanding loans, because again, our patron deletion script is not going to delete anyone that has loans. And that makes sense. Like, if they have loans, they're probably actually active users, or you don't want to lose the link between who has that item out on loads. So it's good that the script doesn't delete that. But if you really want to delete these users because actually they've had that item on loans for like 10 years and they're definitely not bringing it back and they've never come back to the library, we need to get rid of them. So the best way, again, to look at it in an automated way is to use the long overdue process. And you can use system preferences and the script, or you can put all your parameters in the script. I like to use system preferences. So it's going to the default long overdue lost value and default long overdue days. For example, you could say you automatically, with the script, set any item on loan that has been overdue for more than, in this example, 185 days, which I think is about it's more than 6 months. I can't remember, and I can't calculate right now, but let's say 185 days, and set it to long overdue lost. And you can also use the different long overdue patron categories, so that only applies to patrons in a specific category. So again, if you want a bit of safety and you have created a separate category for patrons to delete, you could set that default long overdue patron categories to patrons to delete, and you know it's only going to apply to this specific group of patrons. So when you run the long overdue script, it's basically setting the status of the items to whichever lost value you put in the system preference and returning them so they're off, they're not on loan anymore, they're off the patron's account. You'll notice that max days parameter, and it's because the long overdue script I don't know why, and again, if someone knows why, I'd love to know, ignores by default things that have been overdue for more than a year. And if you do want to have actions on things that have been overdue for more than a year, you need to tell it to look further back. So if you have had Koha for 25 years and you need to apply that long overdue script as far back as 25 years, you would be setting your max days to 9,125 and to make sure that script is going to look at everything at the same time. Right, so we are getting rid of loans. Next step, we are coming to charges. I mentioned it earlier. So we need to write off all the debts, because again, maybe we've had those debts for years. They're not going to come to the library and pay it. They probably forgot, or they're really hoping the library forgot that they had those debts. So we are going to use the batch write-up charges script for that. And again, you can set it to run automatically. And this is where it doesn't actually have parameters that target the borrower's table. So you will need that PDEL category to make sure it doesn't apply to all your patrons, but only those you'll be wanting to delete. Otherwise, everybody will have a fine amnesty, which is also nice, but probably not your purpose here. The fun bit about the write-off debt script is it does only write-off debts. So if your users are actually in credit, great for them, but it's not going to do anything to it. And unfortunately, the patron deletion script thinks, oh, like their balance is not zero, therefore I can't delete them. So you're going to have to do something about those rare, possibly, library members who are in credit. If you think that's a small thing, but still a little bit annoying, you can join me on bug 38059. So we can look into this together, because there will be libraries in that situation for whom it will be annoying to delete those patrons manually. Right, so loans, charges, finally, we are getting to delete the users. And again, set it to run automatically as often as you like. If it's something you're going to do regularly, you might as well do it nightly. So there's a few patrons deleted every night, and you are targeting your category code PDEL, because if you've been using it, then that's the easiest to make sure, double sure, triple sure, that it's only going to delete those users you specified and moved into that category. It will delete any user accounts that have holds ILL requests, suggestions, and restrictions, so just be aware of that. And actually, I also noticed in 2505, there's, thanks to bug 37418, you can decide not to delete patrons if they have a specific type of restriction. So it gives you a little more granularity here as well. It will not delete accounts, as we've already said, with loans. That's why we used the long overdue process. With money owing or in credit, we've just talked about that. It also, and that's also a good thing, won't delete accounts who are guarantors for other accounts. So really useful if a parent account hasn't had any activity, but they're actually the guarantor for the child, and the child does have activity, you won't lose the information from the parent by doing that. It won't delete accounts with the protected flag. That's kind of the whole point of the protected flag, so we expected that. And also something to be aware of, it won't delete accounts that have staff permissions. So for your staff, you will have to have a different process, probably using a report that returns staff, like accounts that have permissions, and maybe like something like the expiry date, and then you can delete those manually. I did say before, you may not need to use the PDEL patron category, because if you're not charging any fines or applying any other types of charges, then it's unlikely you will need that. But if you like it as an extra security, then feel free to use it. And yes, the reason, there's another reason I was using PDEL. It also depends on your criteria to define what's an inactive library member. Because the delete patron script does have some really useful parameters, like expired before, so you can act directly on the expiry date, or last seen or not borrowed since. So you could cut some of those steps as well by just directly putting all that information in the script. What it doesn't have is a where parameter. So again, if you're having some extra requirements, then outside of the expiry date, the last seen date, or the last borrowed date, then you are going to have to follow the steps. If you think it should have a where parameter, this is bug 39515, which I created earlier this year. So please go and comment on the bug and let me know what you think. Just a quick note when I was talking about will not delete accounts. So this is the automated ways using the script, but obviously in the staff interface, you've got a batch patron deletion tools, and that tool actually does not delete patrons with holds. So again, depending on how you want to delete your users and what's important to you to keep or not keep, that could be a deciding factor on whether you'll be using the manual way or the automatic way. So we've deleted the users. It's over, right? We can celebrate. No, we have to delete the deleted users. So in Koha, deleted accounts are moved into the deleted borrowers table, and you'll need the cleanup database script to clear that up. So there's a parameter called deleted patrons, and you just decide how long you want to keep those deleted patrons. That's also a safety. So if you delete something and you're like, I wasn't supposed to delete that. So you can, there still exists in the deleted borrowers table, and there's a way, some ways, if you ask nicely, to get those users back. So again, how long you keep them in that in-between space before fully wiping them out is up to you. So in my example, it's 7 days. And finally, 6 steps later, we have deleted our users. So the users was the main bit, and I would say is the fun bit. But there's more you could delete from your Koha system. So again, thinking about what's useful to you and what is not useful to you. And for that, one of the very potent Koha scripts is actually called cleanup database. So it's the same one I just mentioned to delete the deleted users. So if we look at, again, by theme, looking at the catalog data, it's got parameters to fully remove the deleted bibliographic records and items, because I didn't tell you before, but they don't quite go away either. So you could look into that as well, and that would make your database a lot lighter. You could also do something similar with what happens when you import or where you merge records, either bibliographic or authorities. And also, you can just clear the transfers table, because how long do you need to know that an item has moved from one branch to another once it's arrived? Like, probably not very long, so you can probably clear that quite quickly. So for all those parameters, you can set a number of days after which it gets deleted. You can do something similar for all the user-related data, so that's the list of all the parameters. I haven't put a lot of details because this is well documented in the Koha manual, thanks to the Koha documentation team. So all the links in my slides actually point to the Koha manual. So you could delete the deleted users, that's the one I've just mentioned. There are also options around users using self-registration, so the del UNV is for those that haven't verified their account if you've used that system preferences. If you want to delete old fees, so just clearing the account lines table a bit, you can do that as well. Same for the search history, list invites, restrictions, return claims. I don't use the creator like the batches, but you can do that again when you use those options, the card creation option. There's two really important ones you probably want to look into when thinking about privacy for your users is the notices and the circulation messages. So how long do you need to know that a notice has been sent to a user, for example? If a user queries why they haven't received their overdue notice, how long is it going to take them to query that with them, and how far back are you ready to check? Is it going to be a month, 3 months, a year? Probably not 5 years. So again, get rid of all of that. And then you can look at, if you want to, we can talk about how you manage your statistics, but you could also clear some of the old issues and old reserves. So those are all the return loans and the reservations that have been either fulfilled or cancelled. And finally, all the stuff. So take your broom out of the cupboard and give it a good sweep. So things about background jobs. I mentioned the logs, so from the action logs table. So if you've got all the logs system preference enabled, you're going to be accumulated a lot of logs. And again, are you going to be checking logs as far back as 5 years? Probably not. Probably up to a year sounds like a reasonable amount you'd be checking for stuff. And after that, you can get rid of it. So again, thinking about how you manage your statistics, so how often, how much do you want to clear up your statistics table, and same with your pseudonymized transactions. The other ones are things that I didn't even realize the holidays were part of this until I checked again for this talk. But if you set your calendar for the close days for your library, you don't need to remember that your library was closed 3 years ago on that particular day. We can just forget about all of that. And that was it for cleanup. So I did talk a lot about deletion, and I did say I'm pro-deletion, but it does come with some safety advice, and you will want to be a bit careful before you do things on a scale, especially on an automated scale. So if you have a test, or if you call it a staging server, use it. Always use it first. It's always fun to get a support ticket on library and saying, I did this. And we're like, did you do it on your test? No. Why? So use your test server. That's what it's for. Try it out. Obviously, you should back up your database. You can talk to plenty of other people who would explain to you why that's good to do, because things will rarely go wrong, but just in case, you want to that extra safety. One of the really good tips I have been using is the starting with a small sample. So when we are talking about identifying all our inactive library members, and then moving them all into that category. Maybe you want to start with 5, 10, and see how that goes, and see what the impact is. Maybe wait a couple of months for everybody to get back to you. And if that worked well for you, then you can start going into a few hundred maybe, or a few more, and then just run it regularly. And the other important thing is to ask people outside your team to also look into it. Because if you are the systems person in your library, you are looking at a specific set of things, and maybe you didn't think about all the impacts on the acquisitions team or the cataloging team. So you need to involve them as well, and you need to give them time to do their thing routinely, and then get back to you and say, no, actually, that didn't quite work for us because we lost this and that. So you need to involve a few more people to have that wider view. And that's it for me. So I hope you can now happily delete some of your Koha data. But if you do something wrong, please don't blame me.